What if you were able to sit down for lunch with some of the greatest leaders in the world? What would you ask? What would they say? Welcome to the Linch with a Leader podcast, where you're invited to join us in learning the spiritual principles behind big success. Here's your host, Mike Linch.
Welcome to episode 233 of the Linch with a Leader podcast, where we sit down with some of America's greatest leaders and find out how they have learned to lead with their faith out in front. If I've never met you before, my name is Mike, and it is an honor to welcome you into this leadership journey, as we're all seeking to be the leaders that we were created to be in the spaces and places that God has put us. Well, today on episode 233, I get to sit down with a brand new friend. Not a new friend like I met her on the podcast, but a new friend that I've gotten to know over these past few years. She is somebody who helps take a leader's voice wherever they're at, as a college president, a young entrepreneur, a seasoned business veteran who believes that they have a story to tell, and she helps put a voice to their story. Her name is Julie Shaffner. Julie, I met a few years ago when she reached out to me about the podcast and about some of the people that she represented. And literally, I've gotten some of my best interviews from Julie and her team at Voices to Connect, and they are making waves in this industry. And what I love about Julie doesn't necessarily see herself as a leader, but Julie is a leader. And that's why so many are linking up their carts to her and her team, because she's helped getting them where they need to go. So this is going to be a different interview, because we're really talking about the heart of why she does what she does and how God is using her. So this is going to be a good one, and she is just such a blessing. So I want you to pull up a chair, and I want you to listen in to my conversation with Voices to Connect's Julie Shaffner. Hope you enjoy. Well, Julie, thank you so much for being a guest of mine on Linch with a Leader. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Mike. It's such an honor to be with you today.
Well, you single-handedly have gotten me more guests than any other person I've got out there. I remember you reaching out to me a couple years ago going, hey, I think I represent some people that might be a great fit for you. And man, I think I've used about everybody, Julie. You have to get some new people.
I have a few more to send your way, but I think you have. I love it.
Well, it's been so good. So tell me about, I know Julie now, we've intersected over these past 4 or 5 years. When you were growing up, where did you see Julie going, and what did you see Julie doing?
Julie had no idea. I wasn't one of those kids that really had a big dream for the future. I really was kind of doing what I was doing in the moment. I was, like you, sports were a big part of my life. I was a gymnast for 8 years in high school, played tennis and basketball and softball, loved being a part of a team, working together for something bigger than ourselves. Same goes for today. My parents were all in kind of people. They really had a big impact on me. My mom was PTA president. She led Bible studies. She counseled with women who were married to alcoholics or in abusive relationships. And then my dad was always the treasurer of the churches they attended. And, just a servant's heart, was the first one to get there, the last one to leave, on the board of our school. They were faithful. They still are. My mom passed a couple of years ago, but my dad, he and I threw his first Christmas party this past Christmas. It's been 2.5 years since my mom passed. And it was time to move forward. He loves to decorate. I said, you should have a party. And he said, I was kind of thinking about it. And that's all it took. If you know me, that's all it took. So we did that. And it was a beautiful time, because so many of his friends came up to me and said, your dad is the most faithful person we know. And he has such a servant's heart. So again, I didn't have dreams for the future, but I had a foundation of a really great family and support there. So
what's the trait that you look back now in the rearview mirror of being raised by your parents? What trait do you think you picked up from them that you're thankful for? If they hadn't have been your parents, you may not have gotten it, but because they were your parents, it was a trait that you got from their lives that you go, it probably helps me more than I even realize it helps me. What would you say?
Probably the trait of, first of all, trust in the Lord in all you do, but also not giving up. We just kind of had a family of Everybody stuck to it. And so I'm grateful for that. It wasn't a pressure-filled environment to where there were threats involved if we did it faithfully, but it's what I observed and, have tried to emulate from them.
So I know faith is a big part of yours. We were talking about this a little bit before we went on the air today. Faith's a big part of your journey. When did it become your faith? So they raised you in church. When did all of it begin making sense to you where you're like, oh no, this is my faith now? When did all that begin to really germinate for you?
I went to a church camp when I was 14. And the very first day, it was the first time anyone, even though I grew up in a Christian home, it was the first time someone had challenged me to start my day in the Bible. Again, Christian home and church, but as far as the conversation about a personal relationship wasn't there as much at that point. So the very first morning, I went out by the lake because all the church camps have a lake, and opened the Bible as we do. And the Lord in his providence had me read Jeremiah 29:11-13. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. Then you'll call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You'll seek me and find me if you seek me with all your heart. And it was at that moment, really, the light bulb went on where, I've had a few light bulb moments in my life, and that was the biggest one, of course, where God intersected my life and said, I have something for you specifically, and I want you to seek me.
So you go on, and then I know you had a pretty extensive business career before where I met you that we're going to unpack, really spend most of our time unpacking your company now. What was the business background you had that prepared you for what you're doing now? Because I think what you're doing now is significant, and I think it's got a pretty far-reaching impact that we're going to talk about. What did you learn from the journey you went on in business? Because you were in a couple different stops there that really helped to where you are today.
I would say, God's given gifts to each of us that he wants to use for us to use to glorify him and serve other people. I'd say the gifts he gave me were connecting and creating. So, I started off my career out of college working for the Easter Seal Society of East Georgia. So I got the joy of connecting individuals with disabilities with jobs in the community. And I loved it. And that just taught me so much, about empathy and about, talking to different types of leaders and just sharing the reasons why they should be a part of what we were doing. I feel like that was just in me, and it got refined for something that really mattered. And then, those gifts of connecting and creating, I feel like showed up in jobs along the way for pay and not for pay. God uses our gifts in many different ways, but I'd say early on in that opportunity, just right out of school, just sort of laid the groundwork.
What you're doing now is a company called Voices to Connect, and genuinely you do that. In fact, on your LinkedIn profile, you said something really interesting. I love opening doors, making connections, and creating opportunities for respected executives, published authors, speakers, and nonprofit leaders around the world. When this whole germination of Voices to Connect came about, did you think it would be what it is today? Or what did you exactly think all of this would ultimately be?
That whole interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yep.
I've never been able to answer that. And honestly, I don't know that any of us really can, right? Because only God knows the future. We know what he's revealed to us today that we're supposed to step into or follow. So as far as how it got started, I was in a 5:30 a.m. Bible study with Thursday mornings with about 5 women. And, our kids were getting older and they had activities in the afternoon. So it was the only time we could meet. Nobody else was going to be awake in our house at that time. So Jessica Lally, who's now my business partner, it was at her home. And at the time, she was walking alongside one leader who you've interviewed, Carmen LaBerge, and they had known each other for almost their whole lives. And Jessica always believed in Carmen's voice and what she had to share. Carmen was such a leader in the ministry world, and she had written a book about bringing God, speak the truth, how to bring God back into the conversation. So Jessica was walking alongside Carmen, helping launch her book. She helped get her onto a national radio program that still airs today, 2 hours every morning on My Faith Radio, called The Reconnect with Carmen. She gets God back into the conversation of the news of the day. So I always loved what Jessica was doing. I always loved hearing about it. I was a reader. I was listening to podcasts. We were built very similarly. So at that stage in my life, I was having a stirring that there was something new to step into. I didn't know what it was yet. And so one morning, her prayer request is she needed some help with her business. And there was my second big light bulb moment. First was at 14. Yep. Well, I would say the second was when I met my husband. I should say that.
We just assume that.
I never insert
We're
him into
assuming that.
The third was that morning with Jessica, and it was very apparent that was what it was. So I said, I would love to see what this looks like and come alongside. Fast forward, we worked together for a handful of months, putting Carmen on podcasts, speaking engagements, getting her voice out there because she was a voice that needed to be heard. After that, just at that point, there was an event and speaker agency here in Atlanta, only one of its kind. And the leaders, it was a small boutique agency. The leaders of it said they had all they could handle with the events they were planning. They didn't have enough bandwidth to manage the speakers. So they asked if we wanted to come in and help manage that side of things. So we prayed about it and we felt a peace. So we did. We did that for about 3 months, met about 9, 10 more leaders, started to get to know them, started to work with them. After that period of time, as happens in the event world, things kind of went south with some of their events, and they just didn't have the resources to keep us on at the time, but we still had our LLC, and they came to us and said, we still can't manage these speakers. We don't have the time. So if you want to keep going with them, if they want to keep going with you, then great. So we had conversations, and everybody wanted to come with us. So we grew texts within just a few months, and that's how things really began. And that's when we had to really start considering who are we and who do we want to be.
What is the key? You have these people that you represent. What do you feel like is the calling that God's put on your life for the job that you do for them? You guys are in the background, and that's why even so I'm gonna tell our audience when I reached out to Julie about doing this, she's like, no, I set up people for interviews. I don't get interviewed. And I'm like, but Julie, you are a force. You are making I literally remember when I first heard about you, and I don't think y'all were too far along at that point, and to look at where you are today, what do you feel like if we do this, if I do this, then I am a success for X, for this person that we represent? What would that be for you?
Yeah. So we've learned so much along the way and grown, and God's opened doors and opportunities. I think we've been committed to learning and getting better and becoming more and more excellent. I think it's our calling to steward influence. And we recognized early on, right after we inherited all those speakers, that we really are in the business of influence. And we're accountable for the influence that we're putting into the world. And God was calling us to be stewards of influence in an excellent way, catalysts for the right kind of influence in the world. But of course, we knew we couldn't do it alone. We needed God to steer the ship on that. So I would say if we are building relationships effectively with the leaders we represent and the people in the world who really should know about them and hear their voice, if we're handling those relationships with care, if we're, again, excellent in our communication, I feel like there's so much breakdown in communication. We knew from the beginning we're not going to be transactional. It's not what we're here for. We're not here just to make money and to churn it out. We're here for more than that. So if we can keep focused on that on behalf of the leaders we represent, then that in turn will turn into success in it.
You guys represent some names some people know, and you represent people that maybe people haven't heard of. They've got their sphere of influence. They have their group that they run in, but they're not a Tim Tebow. They're not a Sadie Robertson. The people don't know their names when they hear them. What is a perfect client for you? When you're out there looking, the marketplace is full of people, and it's full of people that are trying to make their mark, trying to make their name. What is a perfect client for Voices to Connect that you go, this person fits us to a T?
That's a good question. Again, over the years, our services and the things we offer have grown. So we really have 4 buckets of things that we do, people we serve. The first are leaders who are getting started, who feel like they have a message to share. We share values. They've maybe done amazing work in ministry or, in the marketplace, but they haven't really clarified their message. They haven't built a digital platform. Maybe they have a website or don't, but need some help with that. They need some assets developed. They need some foundational things. We can start there. We can really we can start with anyone where they are and provide some help along the way. Then we are also walking alongside more established speakers, leaders who've been, particularly on the corporate side in the marketplace for a long time. They've led teams, they've built things. For us to put people on stages, there have to be a lot of boxes checked in terms of, number one, who they are as a person. Yeah. Again, we're not going to just throw people on stages if we haven't met them, if we don't get to know them personally. Who are you as a person? What are you here for? What are your values? What are you running after? Because we really are more about partnership than we are about business. So we are partnering with them. So if we get to the point where, we believe in you and we believe in your message, you can deliver it really effectively. You're here to teach and help others who are behind you. You've already gone ahead and you're going to turn back around and help others get to where you are. Then that's a great avatar for us, for someone who's ready to launch and be on a stage. Then another set of clients that we serve are those authors and leaders who are launching books. So again, we spend time onboarding. Are we a right fit for them? Are they a right fit for us? Do we feel like we can be of help getting the word out about their book that they are getting ready to publish or already have? So that's one. And then finally, we are also walking alongside ministries and nonprofits and helping them kind of expand their reach. A lot of times they're doing incredible work around the world, but they don't know how to show up. People aren't quite sure what they're doing. Their message isn't clear. They're not real forward-facing as these CEOs or leaders of ministries. And so we want to come alongside, and we've got amazing partners who help us with the process. We don't do everything ourselves. And so we love doing that because we've been to the Middle East twice. We've been walking alongside, Mike, you have gotten to know some of them. And so we've been to the Middle East and North Africa twice, launching conferences and partnerships between ministries over there and ministries over here, working with leaders from India, all different countries. So those are kind of our developing leaders ready to go, launching books, and then ministries and nonprofits.
So on this call, Julie, we have lots of school superintendents. Mm-hmm. We have lots of business leaders, corporate, even in those in the collegiate athletics. What would be the best way for them to, if they say, I've got this massive event coming up, I don't have a speaker lined up for that. That's what you're made for. You are made for that person to have a one-stop shop of going, hey, I'm thinking of Elizabeth Dixon, right? I want somebody, I really want to get my company moving more towards customer service or purpose-driven or whatever it is. Tell them what's the best way for them to find you, get in touch with you, and learn more about what you're doing.
Sure. They can email me, julie@voicestoconnect.com, can connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, or as I shared with you recently, Mike, on February the 6th, we are having a speaker showcase where we are featuring 10 top communicators at one event. And each of them are going to be speaking for 10 minutes. So many organizations and event planners, CEOs. It's hard to know who to bring in to help equip and inspire your people if you've never seen them. So we've been hearing that as a problem. So we are so thrilled to be able to be here to help and provide a potential solution. So everybody who is in that position where they might bring someone in to equip their people should come. It's going to be at the Faith Center in Alpharetta on February 6th.
I love that. We'll have links in our show notes for all your information too, Julie, for people to get in touch with you. How many times in this did you almost quit? How many times in this journey did you go, okay, God, I think you got the wrong person. This isn't for me. Did you ever face that?
Oh, yeah. Early on, we were working so hard. Again, we were 10X at the beginning, and we didn't have the people to help us. We were doing everything at the beginning, and a lot of times I just felt like we were spinning our wheels. A lot of work for a little return. But there's one story that comes to mind, especially. It was a Saturday, and I was on my way to Publix to get some sub sandwiches. My son had a soccer game, normal stuff. That day, I was really wrestling through these things with the Lord, just like, is this really, what I'm supposed to be doing? It doesn't feel like things are coming or, the way we do. And so I get to Publix and I'm in line at the deli. And instead of being on my phone like I might normally do if I'm in line, I wasn't. I was still talking to the Lord about these things. And I turn around and there's a guy behind me in a bright purple shirt holding a big bouquet of flowers, and the shirt says "Need to Lead." And I'm just a innately curious person. Yeah. So I'm like, so I Google it, and what comes up is a high school service organization. And I thought, oh, that's neat. I'm going to talk to him because my oldest daughter at the time was president of her service club at her school. So I thought maybe we could do something together. That's how I always think. So I said, can you tell me about your shirt? What is that? What he says, though, was something totally different. He said they had a video platform for speakers and thought leaders where they highlight their content. And then he said people like Horst Schulze and others had been on it. And then, the antennas go up, of course. And so I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. And I share what we do. By the end of the line to get our sandwiches, we decided we should have a part 2. So Jessica Lally, my business partner, and I met with him first and then with his team. What was so cool is that prayerful time of struggle where I'm just asking God to intersect it turned into one of our biggest clients that we had that still bears fruit today. And this is years and years later, So anyway, that I always remember that, we have our Ebenezers where we go back and we remember, okay, when we get to these times of struggle or, in the pit, God's like, don't forget, remember who I am. You may have to wait a little longer, but I'm working.
What would you tell a leader that's about to quit and they are at that place of going, I just don't see progress. I just don't see movement. What have you learned, even from meeting some of your clients who have all kinds of different stories? What have you learned about pushing through, staying with it, not quitting, that you would pass on to somebody today?
Well, I just think it has to start with prayer because, there are seasons. There are seasons to continue on. Sometimes God does redirect. I think of Dr. Roger Parrott, who you've also interviewed on this platform. He wrote a book called Opportunity Leadership, and he talks about how so often in our lives, he gives the analogy of a powerboat versus a sailboat, and how oftentimes we function as powerboats where we make our plans for far in the future and we have our 50 steps to get there and we have our blinders on and we're going. And then so often we miss the opportunities that God's bringing our way, the winds that are blowing if we were to function more like a sailboat, where we plan hard for the things that are right in front of us, but we have enough margin and have enough, we're keeping our sails up. So if God is bringing an opportunity, then we're ready for it. So I think we have to be prayerful about our seasons, ask for wisdom and discernment. Yes, talk to those who are counselors or advisors. But if we don't have clear direction that it's time to step out, then we keep going, we keep trusting, we keep our sails up. We wait for God to blow his wind because, again, his time is not our time. And often, if we're being called to do something outside our comfort zone, something hard that's of him, there's going to be an enemy that doesn't want us to do it. Right. And so there's going to be distractions and discouragement and doubt. So we have to be aware of that too.
Yeah. I think back to my interview with Dr. Parrott, one of my favorite interviews, by the way, just an absolutely delightful soul, just delightful. And I had forgotten all about that comparison of the powerboat and sailboat. It's such a great comparison. As you have struggled, and I think leadership involves struggle. It involves course corrections. It involves, I thought we were going this way and now we're going this way because God opened a door over here, the whole experiencing God, go where God's working, right? Go through it. What have you learned about you wouldn't have known if you hadn't have gone through those struggles and you hadn't have gone through some of those times standing in a Publix line going, what are we going to do here? What would you say you've learned most about you and your own leadership in life?
I'd say the biggest thing that keeps getting reinforced is that it's not about me, that we get the opportunity to partner with the God that came down to us, the God of the universe, whose plans are so much greater than ours. That verse that penetrated my heart at 14. So if I can get myself out of the way and go before him in a posture of surrender every day, then our lives start to transform from the inside out. And then there really are no limits to what God could open up, what he could have us be a part of. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the thing. It's not about the thing we're doing. It's about giving glory to God, being faithful to him in the small things he's calling us to do because we don't see the big picture.
What's your biggest dream for how God uses voices to connect? What would you say is, if I could paint the perfect picture of how God used us, and he may choose to use us differently, what would that picture look like for you and Jessica?
I just want to be available and a vessel used, again, to honor him, to further his kingdom purposes. I would say, we're in a noisy world. There's so much noise blaring at us to get ahead, to cut corners, to compare, to live for our growing followership, to be famous. It's interesting because we're in the business we're in, but we're not created for fame. Only God is. So there's a tension to hold. So I feel like if God can use us to help carry that tension and help open doors for leaders who are not enamored by all that and who have a message to share that will bless people, serve them, help them in their daily lives, help them personally, professionally. We were created in the garden to work. We were created to flourish and to build things, to make things and to do things. And so if we can help be a catalyst for the kind of leaders who will do all of that with integrity and, but hold fast to what's really important, then I think we'll be doing what we're supposed to do.
You said something there I want to sit on for a second. We serve leaders who aren't enamored by that either. How quickly do you pick up when you're in a conversation? Because y'all probably interview some people that would like to be a part of your organization that aren't good fits. It's just not a good fit for them, not a good fit for you guys. What are telltale signs that you see in a leader's life? Because everybody who would come to you, talk to you, is a striver, right? I mean, they're strivers. They're trying to get ahead, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
I fall in that category of, man, I want to make Jesus' name great, and the more people I can get in front of, the better, right?
For sure.
How quickly do you pick up? You've been in this long enough now. Somebody is wanting fame more for them than the Lord. Number two, what are telltale signs when you hear it or see it?
It's a good question. Yeah. We ask a lot of questions on the front end, again, because it takes some time to for God to give discernment. And, every single person was made on purpose for a purpose. Every single person we interact with or face-to-face with, they are precious to the Lord. And, God loves them. Does that mean they're all ready to be on a stage and to be, be profiled in such a way? No, not everybody's ready for that. And in fact, if that were to happen, it would be really detrimental. So it's something we pray for. We pray for a lot of discernment as far as who we would lock arms with, who we would open doors for. One question we've asked along the way is, there's so much potential here. Your opportunities are growing so quickly. What do you do to keep yourself grounded? What do you do to make sure it doesn't take you over? Because, there's an emptiness in that. So just asking questions to see where people are in their hearts. And, we've made some mistakes along the way, and we haven't been perfect in the way we've operated, nor in every relationship that we've started with, but we've learned from it. So,
the New Testament, we'll close with this question. The New Testament says, David served his purpose in his generation, then he fell asleep. What do you believe was the purpose that God created Julie for? You're a wife, you're a mom, you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader. What would you say is the purpose he created you for?
I think he lets me, there are times he lets me see the unseen. He allows me to make connections. Again, it goes back to that for my family, in my own life, in my work, that can lead to something that he wants to accomplish. If I'll listen, I get to be a part of that. And so, it takes different forms. So I would say it all goes back, though, to walking with the Lord, hearing from him, taking the next step, being directed. So there's no job that's too small or too big. We're all put on the planet to do something, in whatever our sphere of influence is, whatever, dirt we're planted on. So it's just looking to him where we are and trusting him for our future, knowing that, this really isn't the real reality. There's so much more going on. I've been reading through the Bible. I'm in Job, and then I'm studying Revelation with a group of women. So really lightweight reading lately. But the theme that I see in both is just there's so much more going on than what we see. So why not plug into the one that knows it all and is the source of all wisdom? And then he promises to give it when we ask. So that's what I try to do.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Julie. She is such a blessing. And it was so funny as we talked, she kept saying, I don't know why you're interviewing me. I don't know why you want to have me on. And yet her heart drives so much of what she does. And she is such a blessing. So let me say this. I am so honored that you take the time to listen each week, to watch each week. It really does mean the world. I would just love others to join you. So feel free and leave a rating, a review on iTunes or Spotify. You can share this. You can subscribe is the easiest way to never miss an episode because we've got some good ones coming. Well, on the next episode, we get to sit down with Steve Cuss. We talked to him last time about managing leadership anxiety. This is where we're going to be talking about the expectation gap that drives so much of our anxiety. And it's going to hit you right in the spot of leadership, because I got off the call and I remember I've told so many people it was exactly what I needed to hear. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So once again, thanks for tuning in today. I pray that you'll go love God, you'll go love people, and you'll go live sent in the space and the place that He's put you today. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Linch with a Leader podcast with your host, Mike Linch. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help more people hear it by subscribing and leaving a review wherever you may be listening. For full episode notes and more spiritual leadership resources, visit MikeLynch.com.